Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. And the first one is titled "Entitled Neighbors Want Pool Access for Free." Not mine, but from my next door neighbor. EN is entitled neighbor and N is my neighbor. N and her husband are one of the neighbors we get along with the most, and they sometimes talk about their backyard neighbor whose backyard shares a fence with their backyard. There's a lot of story about that white fence, but that is for another day. They told us that when they first moved into their current house, that neighbor was super friendly. They would often visit each other and have dinner, chit-chat over the fence. They both had a pool in their backyard. One day the EN told N that they wanted to get rid of their pool. She said that she, her husband and her kids barely used it anyway, and it was too expensive for them to keep it. Neighbor agreed that there was no point in keeping it if no one was using it. Then EN added,
"If it gets too hot, we will just use your pool instead anyway."
Now, EN often makes jokes, so neighbor did not take her seriously at first and simply said no, they cannot use her pool whenever they want, but EN was dead serious. She did not take it well and started demanding access to the pool because it would not be fair for them not to share it when it was hot, and that they, neighbor, already paid to maintain the pool, so it would not be a problem if they, EN, use it from time to time. Neighbor's only response was, "If you want to use a pool, then keep yours because you're not using mine." Entitled neighbor was furious and claimed she misjudged them, that they were not being good neighbors, etc. Mind you, she never asked if they could use the pool from time to time. She assumed that they will let them use the pool. That pool incident started the ongoing war between the two neighbors. And guys, I'm curious, do any of you have a pool in your backyard? As some of you might know, I am not the biggest fan of owning any property, especially houses. I would much prefer an apartment, but having a pool in your backyard is pretty cool. And the next one is titled "Entitled Neighbor's Husband Divorces Her." Before I start, I want to say thank you so much for the positive feedback from my other story. Now, as many of you have requested, I will tell the story about how Karen's husband left her. Like I mentioned in my other story, Karen has a bit of a criminal record. It started with smaller charges such as disorderly conduct or resisting arrest, some of which landed her in jail for a bit. She often did things you would expect of a Karen, you know, like getting into arguments with neighbors for trivial reasons or calling the police for no reason. However, later on she did some more dangerous crimes like DUI or reckless driving. One time she got into an accident because she was texting and driving while her 6-month-old grandson was in the car. Not sure exactly how long this landed her in jail, but when she got back things had changed. While Karen was in jail, her husband was trying to get them to file for divorce. He was a pretty nice guy and was mostly tolerable towards her crazy actions, but her putting their grandson in danger was the final straw. Not really sure how divorces work, but it seemed like things were final because the husband has gotten a new girlfriend, Anna. As one can imagine, Karen lost her crap when she learned of this. This happened on the 4th of July last year. My family was sitting on our back deck eating ice cream and talking. It was almost dark, so we were waiting for the fireworks to start, and that is when we heard Karen storm out of the house screaming,
"Anna, F you!"
We heard her yell. It was so loud and it took me by shock. Following her, the husband and Anna walk out of the house. I would not say that we were eavesdropping on them, more like we were curious. From our deck we had a perfect view of what was about to happen. Karen is screaming at the top of her lungs about how she could not believe he was leaving her and how he is a terrible person for leaving her to fend for herself. Karen is currently unemployed since she had just came out of jail, and she also has no family living nearby, so she's basically on her own without her husband. The husband tries his best to calm her down and tells her that he has given her so many chances, but she keeps messing up and that he's had enough of her going in and out of jails. He says that they should move in since it is clearly not working. This only angers Karen more. This time, her screaming is directed at Anna. Karen goes on to call her a bunch of insulting names and tries attacking her, but the husband blocks her. Karen then grabs a few keys from her pocket and pops the tires on Anna's car. She then starts kicking and punching the car, leaving a few dents. It took the combined efforts of Anna, the husband and their daughter to stop her, and even then they could barely hold her down. My dad called the police a while ago and they are now showing up. One of them tries to calm her down, but she just attacks him. I am pretty sure he tased her. After Karen was contained, they started interviewing the husband, Anna, and my parents. This was her final defeat, and I am glad she finally got what she deserved. I am friends with the daughter, and a few months later I asked what happened to Karen. She told me that she got put in jail again, big surprise, and the divorce was finalized. Once she got out, she lost custody of her. The husband was nice enough to not make her pay for Anna's car repairs because she was already broke. She had to beg her older son, who is 28, to let her stay at his house until she could afford her own place. Mind you, it was his child that she got injured in the car accident. If I were him, I would have shut the door in her face and never looked back. But he's a lot nicer than I would be to her, and he let her stay. Karen's ex-husband and Anna continue to live next to us, and things have been a lot more peaceful. I'm really not missing getting yelled at by her for something stupid. The two of them are actually getting married next month, a small wedding at their house due to the virus. I would like to see the look on her face when she learns that that same effing witch that she had insulted was marrying her ex-husband. By the way guys, speaking about dents in cars, a few weeks ago my girlfriend's parents gave her their old car because she's still a beginner driver and does not need a new one. And unfortunately, only after around 2 weeks of owning the car, she managed to scratch the side door of the car while driving out of the parking lot. But then again, for me, it is not really a big deal because in general, I don't really care about cars. For me, it is just something to go from point A to point B. But I'm curious, have you ever had any car accidents or have you ever scratched your car? Let us know in the comments. And the next one, which is an XXL story, is titled, "Sorry, that is not my driveway, you've been very clear." Hey all, long time lurker, first time poster. I love all of these stories and have been racking my brain trying to remember something I could post here, and I think I finally got one. A few years ago, my ex and I rented a one-bedroom house on a dead-end street in the downtown area of the city I grew up in. We had 3 cats and I lived close enough to my job that I could walk to work every day. The city had and has a poor reputation, particularly with regards to drug overdoses, but none of that affected us. The landlord who owned my home had for some reason actually built 2 homes on the same property. Mine, a small 1-bedroom home, sat maybe 6 feet from the street, and my back neighbor's home, a 2-bedroom, was kitty-cornered behind mine. There was a long shared driveway on the left side of my house that ended at her front door. The number for the neighbor's house was 11.5 and mine was 13. From the beginning, we had issues with this neighbor, whom I hereby dub BN for BITCAY neighbor. Her entire life would fit in the entitled witch thread. She would frequently invite herself over to our house for dinner or drinks, and she would have people coming and going loudly at all hours of the night, and frequently had the police at her home to kick out various boyfriends. By the time we moved out of that house, she had had 2 people actually overdose and die in her home, and had somehow caused an electrical fire in the house that had cost about $35,000 to repair. Keep in mind that this house was maybe 50 feet away from mine, and neither home had particularly thick walls. Mostly, we ignored BN, we did not spend time with her, we didn't answer the door when she knocked, and we just left her alone. The most we interacted was when I would give her misdelivered mail. We wanted nothing to do with her and the hurricane of chaos that was her life. Of course, BN did not like this. She wanted to be in control of everything on the whole street. The driveway that led up to her front door was large enough to fit 4 cars, a fairly big deal in an area with mostly on-street parking. But BN insisted to us when we first moved in that we were not allowed to park in this driveway. The driveway was only for her and her guests, children, boyfriend of the week, etc. She said many times that she would not allow anyone to block her car in at any time. This driveway was directly on the side of my house. My desk was in our converted dining room and was right next to the driveway. Every morning there was a car park directly next to these windows, and every morning that car started up crazy loud because it was a real piece of crap car at around 6 AM, right around the time I was sitting down at my desk with coffee. Luckily, I am a morning person. If I had been asleep during this time, I would have been annoyed. I occasionally had family and friends come by and would warn them to not park in the driveway, but a few times they did. My sister was moving at one point and needed to store some things in my basement, but the only entrance was outside on the back of the house, so she pulled up into the driveway and started unloading boxes. BN flew out of her house and flipped out. But my sister has her own anger issues and handled the crazy situation all on her own. BN did this to two of my friends, my brother and my mother, on separate occasions. She started to flip out on my grandfather once until she saw my mother come up from the trunk of the car with his wheelchair. BN went back into her own house this time. My ex and I did not want to deal with her. We've had our own problems and certainly didn't want to get involved in hers. Sure, it means that we couldn't use the side door of our house that led out onto this driveway unless we had 2 hours to get stuck talking to her, but we decided to just adapt. We had some lawn on the other side of our house that was brown and overgrown with poison ivy. We cleaned it out, filled it with gravel and made it our new parking spot. Voila, crisis averted. Then came winter, a particularly bad winter. We had feet of snow piled up. My ex had gone out and shoveled out our car and a path from our front door to the car. He was out there every hour, clearing off the path and the car and laying down rock salt. My job was waiting until the last possible second to close, so I was not sure if I would be heading to the office or not. My ex kindly made sure the car was available in case I needed it. BN was pissed. We could hear her in the driveway yelling at the boyfriend of the week to shovel. We could hear her saying all kinds of bad stuff about us, and we could hear when she broke her shovel, threw it into the yard and stormed back into her house. Later that day, a plowing company came. 2 guys dug out the cars, let BN move them and plowed their driveway. They even did their front steps. They were gone in less than an hour. And then the landlord showed up. The landlord never showed up at the property unless there was a big deal. My ex and I were in the kitchen at the time, which was also adjacent to the driveway, and could hear BN's loud conversation about how expensive the plowing company was and how much snow there still was in the driveway. Because it was still snowing. The landlord knocked on our side door. I opened it with a big smile. "Hi landlord, hi BN, how are you?" BN shoves papers at me. It is the invoice from the plowing company.
So I'm sure you noticed that we had to have the driveway professionally plowed. I talked to landlord and you have to pay half of this bill.
Me? Yeah, I'm not going to do that. BN?
It is expensive and landlord says that we can take part of it out of next month's rent.
Me? That's nice, but I'm not paying for that.
You have to.
Actually, I don't. I didn't know you were getting the plow guy and I don't use the driveway. Landlord, if service is performed on the shared parts of the property, you should split the costs.
See, you have to.
My eyes narrow as I turn back to look at her. Well, you've made it very clear that it is not my driveway. I'm not allowed to park in it. I had to make my own parking space. You can pay for your own driveway. BN was speechless. She had really thought I would have just done what she wanted. Landlord, you made your own parking space? Me? Yes. I've been told since I moved in that I'm not allowed to park in the driveway and I'm not allowed to park her car at any time. She's yelled at everyone who has come here to visit me that has parked in the driveway, even if they are just stopping by for a few minutes. BN finally looks ready to re-enter the fight, but landlord speaks first. Landlord, thank you, OP. Enjoy the rest of your night. I smiled at them, closed my door and locked it. I could hear BN trying to argue with landlord and could even hear her walk up and down my steps wanting to knock on my door again, but landlord was firm. She had to pay for the bill herself and after that she had to let me park in the driveway too. Oh guys, and I completely forgot, obviously, if you have watched until here, I would be extremely happy if you could post some sort of comment, preferably some star emojis in the comments to support my channel. In addition, if you could like and subscribe to my channel, that would be absolutely amazing. Thank you so much in advance. And the next one is titled, Neighbor's gutter is flooding my property, did not want to fix, okay, I will pay, now I won't. Happened about 2 years ago, friend reminded me of this today. My next door neighbor's house is slightly elevated higher than mine, his gutter is not buried into a drainage system, it floods my side yard when it rains and had progressed to flooding my front yard. I have had nice conversations in the past, but he is totally racist when referring to the people who live across the street who are wonderful, nice people. I approached him about a year ago prior and asked him if we could jointly work on drainage issues. He dismissed me immediately and said,
I don't have any effing money to spend.
I said okay, no problem, and let it go for 6 months. I approached him again one day when he was outside and said I would like to fix it and I will get 3 estimates on the work and I will pay for it since I am such a nice guy and I had just gotten a bonus at work and I am tired of walking through a mud pit. He did not say anything and I told him I would get back to him with a plan and need him to sign off for HOA approval. I am getting estimates around $2,500 to bury his downspouts and tie in drains in the ground and run to a pop-off valves in the back of the house. All 3 estimates wanted to do virtually the same work at around the same cost. So I contact the HOA and put in a request to fix. They then go to him for approval and he says I will not allow him to do the work on my house, and now I am thinking, your water runoff is flooding my yard and you don't want to approve and allow me to pay? The HOA comes back and said we talked to him and he does not allow you to fix the issue. 90% of the water is coming from his downspout, so here comes the compliance part. I ended up putting in a walkway with shrubs on the side of the house, but that does not fix the flooding issue, only helps that I don't have to walk in it. I then filed multiple complaints against my neighbor with the HOA for the damage caused. They sent complaint letters to him telling him if he does not fix the problem, he would be fined. He had to hire his own company and fix his own drains the exact way that I was going to do them. Then he asked me if I was going to pay, and I smiled and told him to go F off. So, neighbor's downspout on house causes my yard to flood. I offered to fix it and pay for it, $2,500. He stupidly said no. He ended up having to pay for the work himself, and the money I would have spent on paying for it went into putting in a walkway and a bunch of other things in my garden. Cheers. And guys, that's what I would call textbook malicious compliance. By the way, I'm curious, how do you guys feel about malicious compliance stories? Do you find them interesting? Let me know in the comments. And the next one is titled, You don't care if we get robbed? Fine. Quick info, I live in a small gated community, about 30 to 40 houses. However, unlike most gated communities, the sidewalk leading into the community from the outside is not gated, meaning literally anyone can come in. There's no sentry at the post next to the gate, as it is an automatic gate. You get in with either a code or a sensor, and the cameras on the sentry post are purely for show and don't work. My dad has a really bad habit of leaving the doors unlocked. All of them, the front door and the 2 back sliding doors, one in the living room and one in the master bedroom. He does this because he primarily works from home, important detail later, and likes to go in the backyard to smoke, so locking the doors all the time is, quote,
tedious
for him. He leaves the house every now and again to replenish his cigarette supply or to get lunch, and he always leaves the doors unlocked. This triggered my anxiety, as around the time we moved in there, we had been a robbery at one of our neighbors because they left the back door open for their dog and left the house real quick to pick up a child from school. They had been gone for 10 minutes, and when they returned, the mom's jewelry box and expensive watch had been stolen. So obviously, I wanted the doors to be locked, especially when no one was home even for a moment. When I am home with someone else there, I feel a little more at ease, but at night I always triple check to make sure the doors are locked because he does not lock them then either, so I also have to sneak into the master bedroom when my parents are asleep just to make sure their stupid sliding door is locked. One day I had gone out with a friend for the entire day, and I had reminded my parents that I would likely be back pretty late. We left my house around 11 AM and he dropped me off at 9 PM. When I got out of his car, I realized my mom's car was there, but not my dad's. They only take my dad's car when they are going out for a while. I got a bit nervous but trusted that my mom would have at least checked to make sure the doors were locked before they left, but nope. I get to the front door and looked in the small crevice of the wall and the door to see if the lock was in the wall. It wasn't, so I go inside and guess what? Neither of the back doors were locked as well. I got mad, and I mean mad. I texted my mom immediately, asking how long they had been out and how long they were planning on staying out. She texts back the times and steam started blowing out of my ears. They had been gone since 2 p.m. and were likely not going to come back until near midnight. The house could have been completely stripped of literally all of our belongings in that amount of time. I call her and start shouting that I had just gotten home and all the effing doors were unlocked. She panics in response and asks if anything is out of place. After a quick run through the house, I deduce that nothing seemed to have been taken, so no one must have noticed. She sighs in relief and says that she asked my dad to lock all the doors before they left and she would talk with him about it now. When they get back, my dad is angry at me. He starts yelling at me saying,
"This is my house, I do what I want."
Yada yada yada. When I protest that we could have been robbed, he decides to show off just how big his ego is and says,
"Honey, look at me. No one would dare to rob the house when I'm living in it. Everyone here is scared of me."
I stood there staring at him, my jaw dropped, and it was at that moment that I wondered how my mom fell for this moron. He puts on the
"Ha, I've won"
smirk and then says,
"Nobody's brave enough to rob this house. Relax."
Fine, I will relax. For the next couple of weeks, I make sure to go out of the house as much as possible, usually to my previously mentioned friend's place, and I would always take all my valuables with me, being my laptop, my 3DS and all its games, my Nintendo Switch and some of my own expensive jewelry. The reason for this is because my parents like going out together when I am not home because they feel they'd be obligated to bring me with them. I had told my friend about what was going on, so they suggested leaving my valuables at his house so I don't have to bring them with me everywhere I go, to which I happily obliged. And then it finally happened. As I mentioned before, my dad works from home. His office, it's just a large desk with 2 laptops and 2 monitors, was in the living room near the sliding door. His work was primarily done on a laptop that costed well over $900. He had tweaked and added some things to it to make it even better than it was previously. I'm not very tech savvy, so I'm not 100% sure what exactly he did to improve it. The other laptop was about $500, which he used mostly for personal stuff. So one day I ran out of paper in my journal and decided to walk to the local Walmart, which was about 10 minutes away, to buy a new one. My mom was at work and my dad was likely out getting lunch, so I left the empty house carelessly, leaving the doors unlocked. I took my sweet ass time walking to that Walmart, the usual 20 to 30 minute walk to and from there, taking about an hour and 15. When I got to the final crosswalk to go across the street to my community, my phone rang and it was Dad. He's in a panic saying he could not find his laptops. They were not on his desk or in his bags or anywhere else he could have left them. He asks me if I had seen them. I tell him, "I saw them on your desk before I left. Are you sure they are not there?" After a long pause, he asks me where I am and I told him I was walking back from Walmart. He didn't know I had taken the scenic route back home, so he thought that in the span of 20 or so minutes, someone had come into the house and unplugged both his laptops from the monitors, taking them, the chargers and his spare cash in one of the drawers. When I got home, he had gone to our neighbors' houses asking if they had seen anyone go into the house. All but one said no. That one told him that they had seen a man enter the house through the sliding door to the living room and leave, but she thought it was my dad since she had seen him frequently leaving the house through the back doors when he goes out, especially during the past few weeks. My dad looked like half of his soul had been sucked out of his body by Satan himself when he found this out and came back, and it was lots of fun watching him explain to my mom why his laptop, spare cash and my mom's iPad were missing. Some calls to the police were made. The neighbor described what the man was wearing to the police, and after the police questioned some other neighbors, one that lived close to the gate had said they clearly saw a man with the clothes described walking out of the community with a large bag. After about 2 weeks of searching, the police found the man and he was arrested. The laptops and my mom's iPad were returned, but my dad's personal laptop had been factory reset, the iPad's screen was cracked and the money was gone. The door always stayed locked after that. And guys, I'm curious, how is that for you? Do you also have the habit of not locking your doors? Honestly, in my opinion, that would be pretty stupid if you ask me, but then again, I think a few years ago, or maybe it was already a decade ago, I once read that in countries like Sweden or Norway, sometimes people don't lock their doors because virtually there's almost no crime happening whatsoever, at least in the countryside. But then again, I guess nowadays that has probably changed. Give me your laptop, since you have two. So I work in IT, web development stuff, so I know my way around a PC and my neighbors know this. And a week ago or so, one of them comes to my door and says that they bought a laptop but was not starting up. I told her that I don't really know laptop hardware and only open up PCs, so I can look if something is wrong with the software, so I can probably fix it, but if it is hardware, then she would need to go to a shop. I invite the choosing beggar to enter because I want to get it over with instantly and not have to go drop the laptop off at her house. I turn it on, nothing, not even a light, nothing works. The charging light is on, but the laptop is dead. I told her she would have to go to a shop because this is not a software issue. She mumbles but leaves without saying thanks. Which I did not really care, really, I just wanted my peace and quiet. Then yesterday she rings the door, I open and there she is with the laptop in hand. I will paraphrase the conversation, choosing beggar her, M for me. Choosing beggar,
I just got back from the store. They said the motherboard is dead.
Me, sorry to hear that, it's a shame, can't you get a ref? CB cuts me off.
No, I wanted to ask you about your laptops.
Okay, what about mine?
Well, can you give me one of them? I need it for my kids and they don't have anything to play on.
No, I cannot give you a laptop because that is my work laptop. Bought and paid from the company I work at. It's not mine.
Oh, come on. Just tell them you lost it or someone stole it.
I would get fired if that happened. Really would. Sensitive information on laptop.
Well, the other one?
That's my wife's laptop.
Give me that one. It's perfect for me.
At this point I was fuming, but this person is a close neighbor and friend to my mom. I cannot give you my wife's laptop. She bought it. It's hers. Go return the laptop from where you bought it.
They will not refund me. They say it's my fault for not checking it before buying.
Mind you, she bought it second hand. Well, yes, it is your fault. I have to go, but good luck with that. Slammed the door while she started to talk again. But I really did not have time to deal with her crazy today. These people, how entitled are they to think I can just give away or lie to my job? Have you guys ever met a choosing beggar? Let us know in the comments. My neighbor blamed my dog for car damage after I refused to let her use my Wi-Fi. Okay, so a bit of backstory. My sister and I used to live in this little fourplex in a busy area on the bottom. It was a pretty nice place, the neighbors minded their own business and it was great. Until they moved in. So this family, a couple, 2 kids and her mother, moved into the apartment diagonally from us. No big deal, we were hermits, so we did not introduce ourselves or anything, and I thought life would just continue on. Me, obviously me, neighbor, wrong. So one day I am home alone, my sister was at work when someone is knocking on my door. I lock my dog up, he's not vicious or violent, he just likes to get into people's space. And opened the door. Now this lady looks kind of crazy, a few branches short of a Christmas tree, you know. Anyway, she's holding this iPad and she's all,
"Can you help me? I don't know how to unlock my iPad."
Being the nice person I am, I agree and let her into my house while I try to figure out what is going on. Apparently, she had gotten this iPad for payment for cleaning someone's house. This is when I learned she did not have a job and they had forgotten the password. She did have the iCloud info though. Sketchy, but not my table. I call Apple and see if I could help reset this thing. As I am on the phone, she goes and gets her daughter for some reason I don't remember. That is fine, whatever, but while I am fixing this, she's looking around my house and sees that I have a bag of lifesavers. She asks for some, which I give her and her daughter. When I get her thing figured out, I hand it back to her and kinda tell her to leave. Not in a rude way, I was tired and did not want to socialize. As she is leaving, she comments on how good my house smells and asks if there's any chance I had some extra perfume I did not need. Looking back now, I should not have, but I have her a couple bottles of old cheap perfume and showed her the door. She did grab a huge handful of candy
for my son
before she left, but whatever. That is just the beginning, so she at some point exchanged numbers with me for some reason, and a few weeks later she texts me asking if she could use my Wi-Fi. I had already agreed when she was at my house before, as long as she paid towards it. But as soon as I agreed, I knew that I should not have. My Wi-Fi was crap even with just me and my sister, so I gave her the wrong password. I know it was petty, but I did not know how else to tell her then. So weeks passed and she would just continue to ask for the password. I would tell her I changed it and that I would call the company, but I knew that was not the end. One day after I told her that I was going to try again, we had this conversation. I fixed as much grammar as I could. Neighbor.
I was going to ask you, do you have any lip gloss from that nice place or anything like that?
Me? I don't wear makeup. Neighbor.
Okay, can you do me a huge favor? Can I come down and pick a few clothes? I will wash them myself. I need them. Please, my kids are waiting to go down and I will pay you for them. I just need a few things to wear out of town.
So let it be known, this lady is a skinny girl and I am not. I'm kinda heavy, but I knew that she would not fit into anything of mine. I did have a new roommate who was smaller, who neighbor had constantly commented on how cute and expensive her clothes were, but I would not cross a boundary like letting her take my roommate's things. Me, I cannot. You won't fit in anything of mine and I cannot let you take things from my roommate's closet. Neighbor.
Well, what about cute pullovers or something? Or more smell goods and candy?
Me, I don't have any more candy. Truth. Neighbor.
Do you have a cute purse or big bag or some kind of cute bag I can have? I'm going out of town and need one, please.
At this point, I did not reply. She would keep asking me for everything if I continued, so I did not reply to this message, but a day later I get this. Neighbor.
What is the username to enter the sign-in page?
Me? Sign-in page? You want to log into my Wi-Fi? Neighbor.
I promise I won't look at your stuff. I just want to change the password to something I can remember.
Me? I'm not really comfortable with that though. Sorry, but no. She never messaged me back, but a few weeks later, while I was at work and my sister was home, my sister called me in a panic. Sister, do you take the dog out back to pee? Me, confused as F. No, why? Sister, that guy, lady's husband or whatever, just came down and said that there are scratch marks on his car and that he thinks we are letting the dog jump on their car. So this is what happened. Husband came down and accused us of letting our dog jump up on their car. I thought this was ridiculous, as we don't take our dog back that way to pee, let alone the fact that their car is on the complete other side of the lot from ours and we would have to go out of our way to do that. Our dog is always leashed and does his business and then goes back inside. We have an eye on him at all times, so the guy claims that he followed the footprints from his car, the dog prints, to our front porch, which the path to our door is completely cement, and that is how he figured it out. My sister denied it, even refusing to go look at his car, as we are both 1000% certain it was not our dog. The guy gets frustrated and claims that it is on cameras that he had installed and that he had proof. My sister told him to bring her the proof. He threatened to call the cops and stormed back to his apartment to get this proof. That crazy neighbor never returned. I don't know why they would do that. Maybe it was how I treated them or how I would not let them into my account, but we had not had problems with any of the other neighbors. He never called the cops or showed the proof, and she never spoke to me again after the whole thing. I did not lose sleep over it. I was more upset that they would try and blame my dog. Guys, do you have any neighbors that constantly ask for free stuff and don't give you anything in return? Let us know in the comments. You can park anywhere but where I park. This happened a few years ago, but a conversation about parking has brought it back up and I thought it would be perfect for this subreddit. It is fairly simple, but was so satisfying. So my house is at the end of a close. This is basically a small, longish, private dead-end road to which our house was the last one off. When you reached the end, the actual road morphed into our driveway, was a different color and was separated off by hedges aside from the car entrance. It was clearly our driveway, we owned the land. Upon purchasing the house, my parents were not warned of any a-hole neighbors. The driveway has space for 4 cars, we have 1, it is rarely used as both my parents get the train to London for work and walk to the station. This is relevant, until we come back from a 2-week holiday and find an old Renault plonked in our driveway. At first, we say nothing, because we have no issue with someone using our driveway just to visit their family or temporarily, but when the car kept leaving and coming back, we started to get annoyed. They had not even asked us, we don't use the other 3 spaces, but the rudeness pissed us off. So when the car next pulls into our driveway, we are waiting. We open the door, confront the driver and ask him nicely to stop using our drive as a public car park. Neighbor gets annoyed, said he always used it, old neighbors had no issue, looks us dead in the eye and goes,
"You can park anywhere else, but leave me my space or I will be pissed."
My dad replies and goes, "We can park anywhere else? In that case, we won't park where you park your car." Old rude man smiles, thinks he won and walks off a few doors down to his house. I think my father has given up and let him win. I am a bit disappointed. The next day I wake up for college to the sound of my dad's car. The old man has gone to work and my dad is in the process of parking his bunched up massive Land Rover right over the entrance to our massive drive. Meaning no other cars can enter. Technically parking anywhere else other than where the old man wanted to leave his car. I forced my Jekyll and Hyde neighbor to move out, but I did not stop there. How we got 2 of our evil neighbors evicted. We, wife and I, live in a townhouse complex. For anyone outside of my country, it is like a row of houses in a gated community. Our complex has 3 rows with 6 houses and 1 row with 5. Need room for that community pool. The 2 evil neighbors in question lived across from us, the one right across from us, Unit 10, and the one to their right, Unit 11. Not real numbers for obvious reasons. What you need to know is the driveway separating each of the rows. It is wide enough to fit 2 cars okayish. If both cars traveling slowly, they can pass each other with ease. When they first moved in, we got along okay with them. I even played games with their kids, 3 each per unit, when walking past to my house from the car park. I thought they were good families, as when the kids did something like kick balls at our walls and not stop, I would tell the parents and the kids got punished. I explained this cause in just one day they went from a nice family to assaulting my wife. We came home from an event, I think the movies, one night. Another neighbor of ours made it to the driveway before us, so he was first. The people in number 10, whom I will now refer to as Psycho Woman and A-hole Husband, had their family van parked out front of their house across from my house. Kids were getting in and out of the van while Psycho Woman was keeping an eye on things. Our other neighbor, who lives on our side of the complex right next to us, moved his car slowly past Psycho Woman and the van first. We will call him Nice Neighbor for now. When Nice Neighbor slowly moved past the van, there was no problem at all. My wife was right behind Nice Neighbor and did the exact same thing, slowly moved her car past in full view of Psycho Woman. The strange thing is that nothing happened. My wife made it past without even a glare. I got out and opened the garage door for her to park the car. We reversed the car into our garage and I was about to shut the rolling door when Psycho Woman comes screaming over and yelling, accusing us of trying to run over her kids. She barged into our garage right past me and banged on the driver's side window to the point my wife had to roll the window down or Psycho Woman would have broken it. She started pointing a finger and yelling about how dare my wife try and run over her kids. I want to point out that from the time my wife passed the van till the time Psycho Woman came raging over was 2 minutes. Why didn't she blame Nice Neighbor and why didn't she say anything as my wife moved the car past the van? It is like the worst delayed reaction in history, and to this day we still don't know the real reason they had it out for my wife and I. If the real reason was running over the kids, Psycho Woman would have been in Nice Neighbor's face or in my wife's face while she moved the car past the van. My wife felt cornered and scared and I was about to drag Psycho Woman out of our garage when A-hole Husband came storming over and threatened me to not touch his wife. So I had to leave my wife cornered and defenseless as to hold off A-hole Husband in the driveway. After a few minutes of screaming at my wife, Psycho Woman went too far. She slapped my wife hard across the face and her sharp nails left multiple scratch marks and bleeding. That was the last straw for me as my adrenaline kicked in. I'm not a violent guy, I like to think I'm normally smart by having a policy of the best defense is to not get into a fight in the first place. I stormed over to Psycho Woman, but a-hole husband grabbed my shoulder from behind and demanded to know where I was going. I turned around and gutted the idiot in the stomach with a right hook, then ignored him as he went down. I grabbed Psycho Woman from behind as she was still wailing on my wife and threw her to the ground outside of our garage. I told them to rack off, polite way I said it, and leave us alone. We went inside and called the police to file a report. The police took notes and photos. I even said I punched a-hole husband in defense of my wife. I got nothing to hide. The police did not do much apart from take notes, and that was it. The Jekyll and Hyde 180 they pulled on us from good neighbors to assaulting my wife really took us by surprise. In the weeks and months that followed, we got insults and threats from units 10 and 11 as 11 joined their friends in condemning us. Most others in the complex took our side as they either saw or heard what happened. One thing was clear, units 10 and 11 had to go, we own our house and we ain't up and leaving our lives because Psycho Woman wants to start drama with us. First I called the Body Corp, they managed the complex kind of like a commercial HOA, but not a HOA as not run by residents of the complex, but a company. And filed a report about both 10 and 11 showcasing all our documented proof of the harassment and threats towards us. Next I talked to the landlord who owned 10 and 11 and about 5 other houses in the complex as he is a good friend. He seemed concerned but not enough to kick them out, guess he really wants rent payments. So I decided to get rid of them myself. First I found their Wi-Fi network and before I shut them out of it, I got their email address, then locked them out of their own internet connection. I had their phone number from when we were good neighbors and got myself a burner phone. I signed them up for every spam email I could find, order takeout to be paid for on delivery every night of the week. I made sure their mailbox was stuffed with advertising. I even had men knocking on the door for promised fun, only to leave angry, and had a-hole husband and Psycho Woman at each other's throats. I made sure their phone was ringing at all hours of the night. They even threw the phone out of the window. As a final favor, I had a friend who runs a dog washing business come around, pretending they booked her. When they explained they had no dogs and told her to duck off, she finally understood what we have been dealing with. They kept berating her to leave, throwing in racial slurs. Bad idea. She took out the hose meant to wash the dogs and sprayed Psycho Woman and a-hole husband and inside the house all over their carpet. I think they finally got the hint and moved out only a month later. Number 11 followed them a few weeks after. The entire complex had a huge pool party in celebration. But I was not going to let them off that easy. That psycho wailed on my wife for no good reason, prepared to lose it all. From when we were on good terms with Psycho Woman and a-hole husband, I knew they were on temporary visas while trying to apply for permanent residency. I made sure to mention to immigration where they had moved to, thanks friends in the rental market, and handed over the police report of them assaulting us in our own home for no good reason. Seems Psycho Woman did not make her own police report, so ours was the be-all and end-all and was enough to get them kicked out of the country. I know the country they come from, it is hard to get work, why a lot of people from that country move here. I feel zero remorse booting them out, zero zip nada. Guys, would you say that OP's reaction was appropriate or was it over the top? Let me know your opinion in the comments. Woman tries to destroy my orchard, I bankrupt her and get her house torn down. Well, let's start a few years in the past. My great-grandparents planted an orchard, it is now at least 120 years old. My grandparents and my parents were really proud of the peach trees growing in it and did their best to keep them in good health and well. We always threw a big party when the peaches were ready to be harvested and invited all of our friends and neighbors to it. I loved those parties. The neighbors on the property to the south of our orchard were particularly fond of our peaches. They were a bunch of fine old people and me and the old man, Sam, were pretty good friends. He taught me a lot about woodworking with hand tools only, and we had some great evenings in his workshop and we finished many a good whiskeys in there together. In return, he got a lot of fine peaches, marmalade, homemade peach liquor, etc. Sadly, he died a good 10 years ago. Cancer is a real a-hole. His wife followed soon after. Many suspected it was of a broken heart. They had no kids, so all of their property was left to the state except his tools and whiskey collection, which he had gifted me a few weeks before he died. In comes Karen, the name speaks for itself. Haircut, attitude, crappiness. The whole deal. She bought the property of my late neighbors. We had not had the kind of money to buy it at that time, as we had met some dire straits the years before and all our savings were gone. The first thing she did, before she actually moved in, was to go round and making demands of the neighbors on the surrounding properties. When it was finally our turn to listen to her gibberish, she told us that we needed to remove half of the trees as the leaves were blowing on her property. We told her in a polite way that we won't comply to her demands, as the orchard is a vital part of our family heritage / tradition and life and has been there for at least 120 years. She was pretty pissed but did nothing for the time being. There are some things you need to know before I continue with the story. The workshop I mentioned before was situated right at the border to our property. It was a small timber-framed building, at least 160 to 180 years old. The regulations in my state are pretty strict concerning old structures. Every structure over 100 years old is protected and you need a special permission to tear it down. Failing to get this permission can lead to a hefty fine. To get the permission to build a new building, it has to be up to code and you have to ask your surrounding neighbors, and if they agree, you are good to go. Except there's one speciality in my county. You have to keep a certain distance to the border of the property to allow emergency services full access to your property. If one of these requirements is not met, the building is illegal or at least only partially legal and can actually be ordered by court to be torn down. That might come in handy later. So, back to my Karen. After our first encounter with her, she did her best to pester the whole neighborhood. She got the neighbor's dog put down because he allegedly attacked her brat. It later turned out she faked the attack. The dog was the sweetest and most innocent dog you could imagine. A Bernese mountain dog, big but a real teddy bear. Anyways, she later got us to stop doing our annual peach parties, as she called the police every time for various reasons. Noise complaints, we had a band playing there in the afternoon. Arson, we lit a fire in a designated fire pit in the middle of our property. She called the ATF on us, allegedly making moonshine. My dad had a license to distill for our own consumption. In short, she was a real pain in the bum, and after 3 years we decided it was not worth it to deal with various officers and law enforcement agencies every time we threw the party, and we decided to quit. After she had reached this goal, she resorted to pestering us to remove the orchard. We did not cave in, and some things started to get really fishy. Somehow, the tires of our trucks got slashed, eggs got thrown on our farmhouse, our cat disappeared and surfaced a few days later in pretty rough condition. It looked like somebody had tried to cut his tail off. Don't worry, he healed up completely, but we actually couldn't prove that she did all that. Then came the day she made her biggest mistake. She had a company come in a sort of secret operation and tear down the old woodworking workshop overnight. 2 days later, they started building a big garage / recreational center / house right where the shop was, but she missed one fine detail which got pretty important later on. She did not ask for our permission, nor for the neighbors. A short while after, the trees right next to her property started to get sick. The leaves turned brown in the middle of summer and the branches started to die. We lost 4 trees before we figured out the cause. Somebody had driven long copper nails into them. We had a suspicion, but we could not prove it. So we put up some trail cameras, perfectly legal as it was on our own property. We caught her red-handed. My dad confronted her, she apologized, and my dad, being the way too nice guy he is, wanted to let her get off the hook. But not me. The nail she drove into our oldest tree was the final nail to her coffin. I started to investigate. I had some friends at the administration of our county and asked them to do some inquiries. Turned out she has not applied for permission to tear down the old shop, nor for permission to build a new building. I further did some inquiries on the borderline of our property. Turned out, the old markers vanished over time and her building was about 3 feet on our property. After I had gathered all this information, I presented it to my parents. At first, they were reluctant as they did not want to start a neighborhood clash. But after I recalled all the things she did to us and our neighbors, they were in. So let the games begin. First, we called the authorities on her for tearing down a protected building and presented them with all the evidence we gathered. Then we called the building authorities on her for building a building without permission, not up to code, and not only didn't she keep the required distance to the property border, she also built on our property without our permission. Long story short, turned out the workshop has not only been protected because of its age, but also because it was a historical landmark which played a vital role in a conflict back in the 1860s. She got sued for this and had to pay a fine of an equivalent of about $150,000. She further had to demolish her newly built building, costing an additional $50,000, got fined for this too, about $83,000, and had to rebuild the workshop on her own expense, which was another whopping $154,000 as it had to be period correct up to the smallest detail. Means it had to be built with the correct materials, with hand tools only, and to the correct dimensions. As you can imagine, paying professionals to build quite a large timber-framed building only by hand gets pretty expensive pretty fast. So, all in all, it cost her an equivalent of $437,000 plus further expenses as lawyers, etc. This caused her to go bankrupt, so she had to sell the property in the end, which my parents bought, by the way. Last I heard of her was that she moved back to the big city. And guys, unfortunately, we have already reached the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and if you haven't already, please also go to patreon.com/ripeyoutube, where I upload exclusive Reddit videos starting at just $3 a month. This is a great way to support me in case you are interested, and the chance for me to become independent from YouTube revenue. Thank you so much for watching, please don't forget to subscribe and like the video, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.